Hello, I'm Matthew Goldstein, Chancellor of the City University of New York. Welcome to our program, CUNY Honors. We are pleased to have the Chair of the New York State Committee on Higher Education, the Honorable Kenneth LaValle, as our guest today. Senator LaValle has served in the New York State Senate for over 27 years. He has been chairman of the New York State Higher Education Committee since 1979. For 24 years, Senator LaValle has been an indefatigable energy at the Senate. Senator LaValle is known especially for his pioneering work with truth and testing, legislation to make testing agencies more accountable to test takers and to strengthen student access to testing information. He is a champion of senior citizens and the disabled, and responsible for drafting much of the existing legislation providing disabled citizens with greater access to educational opportunities. Senator LaValle is a very strong advocate for support in higher education. Senator LaValle was born in Brooklyn, and after moving to Long Island, he earned his undergraduate degree from Adelphi College, a Master of Science in Education from SUNY New Paltz, and a JD from Touro College. He has been named Man of the Year or Legislator of the Year by many diverse local and statewide organizations. Welcome, Senator LaValle. It's wonderful to have you with us.
Great to be here, Chancellor. It really is.
Senator, tell us about your early years. I mean, somebody must have influenced you that resulted in your lofty position that you have today. How did politics and New York State governance come into your life, and where did that come from?
Well, as you indicated, I was born in Brooklyn. I lived in an Italian neighborhood with relatives nearby. So I grew up with a very strong support system around me. And my mother was probably one of the strongest influences. We always talked politics at a very, very early age. And even at a time when I didn't understand all of the nuances, but I would hear my parents talk, my mother talk about Thomas Dewey being the governor, and I would, pay attention. We moved from Brooklyn out to Long Island, and it was the first time I attended a public school, because in Brooklyn I attended a parochial school. And we were now away from that close family of grandparents and aunts and uncles, and so I would get now into school in a place called Uniondale that is now grown up to be suburban and almost cityfied, really. And my mother continued to play a strong role, but then came the 7th grade. And I had a teacher in the 7th grade that just set on fire for me this whole thing about government and what government was all about. My mother continued to play a role, and I tell people that as long as I can remember, my mom and I would watch national conventions, both the Republican and the Democratic conventions, from the earliest time when we had a little black and white TV. So we're talking back
50s
in the early 50s, and the two influences, 7th grade, Mom continuing to make me aware of current events and what was going on around me in the community. She was very active. She was president of the PTA. She was president of the group that Women's Auxiliary of Kiwanis. She was involved with a group that founded the library in Uniondale, and on and on and on. that year of 7th grade, my best friend's dad ran for mayor in Hempstead. And we went around and did things that kids do. We put flyers in doorways and ran for coffee and, and so forth. I believe that I've been involved in political campaigns all the way from, I think, 7th, 8th grade into my adult life. Believe it or not, my parents wanted me to go to medical school, so I entered college as a pre-med student. And when I looked at my second year of organic chemistry, physics, microbiology, I believe, and some other heavy courses, I said to my father, that's it. And I really wanted to be a philosophy major, but he said, what can you do with that? So I settled for history and political science, which, if you think about that, you have to really go to graduate school or do other things. And then got into teaching, elementary teaching, just to shorten it. Met a boyhood friend of my dad's who was the state senator, became his education advisor.
Oh, who was this?
Leon Giuffrida, who was chairman of the Education Committee in the Senate for many years. I then became the executive director of the Senate Education Committee, having left a job in the Middle Country School District as a principal. And I remember my son saying to me, Dad, you keep taking jobs and your pay keeps going down. I think I was making $36,000 a year as a principal. I went to $30,000 as director of the committee. And when I got elected to the Senate in the 1976 election, the salary was set at $23,500. So you could see how that income.
I'm sure your wife was delighted with all of this.
She couldn't figure out some of my career moves, but there was really a burning desire to serve people, serve my community, try to make change, and try to hopefully, on my watch, make changes in the future that would better both the communities and the people that live in those communities.
You know, we're going to get into your role at the Senate in a minute, but I'm interested in the effect that a teacher had at an early stage, and you are a professor today. You teach at Dowling College, you teach at Stony Brook, New York State politics and intergovernment relations. What drew you to do that? Do you see a teaching career next in Ken LaValle's?
Well, my role in all these years in higher education, I think, has given me an appreciation for higher education and the students. And I tell people, one of the things that's important to me as an individual is that to be relevant. And every day that I wake up, I say, how can I be relevant? What can I do? What can I learn? What can I be that makes me relevant? Well, I would tell you that teaching and being around young people, and this was something that my mom was always involved with young people, I found that there's no better way to be relevant than to be and learn from young people about what's going on in our society, because as adults sometimes we forget that there is another world out there, and the students are the future, and I think we as adults can learn a great deal from them.
And also teaching and getting into the classroom, meeting students, other faculty, must help mold or shape or inform the good work that you do every day as chairman of the Senate Higher Education Committee.
Sure.
Talk about, that's an important committee in the Senate. I mean, New York State has this huge impact in higher education. 2 major public university systems over 100 private institutions,
Right.
some of them world-class institutions, Columbia University, for example, New York University. What do you do as chairman, and why did you get interested in this? And
Well, I believe that the role of our committee is, and we have a diverse group of 13 people from all over the state. Some of the senators come from New York City, from the different boroughs, and we have senators from upstate, senators from the island. So it's a good representation in terms of the state. Most everyone has, outside of the city, has a state university, college or university in their district, a community college in their district, or a private university. So they know firsthand what it is that the needs are, because it's part of their district responsibilities. So we deal with the issues of institutional aid. How can we provide money for the systems, for City University, for the State University, for the independent colleges, to provide what is needed for their mission, and that is providing an education for students. The second component is to deal with the issue of how do the students pay for their higher education, and that's through tuition. Many students need help and support, so we then look at the programs of tuition assistance. We look at the HEOP program, EOP. We look at how does the Pell Grants support and supplement what we're doing here. So student financial aid is a big, big component. A couple of years ago, I was really blessed by putting together a blue ribbon task force that was headed by Cliff Wharton, former chancellor of State University, and Paul Volcker, the former chair of the Fed. So we came out with recommendations that, many times blue ribbon panels come out with a report, goes on a shelf, collects dust. I wanted something, and Cliff Wharton and Paul Volcker wanted something that we could implement, and we made changes in the TAP formula that really allowed for more students to receive more aid that would help them with their education. So we have that component of student financial aid. The third component that is not recognized as much, but is very, very vital, is that of the professions. We have 39 licensed professions that are licensed by the state education department. And we deal with that by increasing their scope of practice. What can they do as an accountant? What can they do as a physician? And on and on and on. As a nurse or LPN or physical therapist. These are some of the licensed professions that are licensed by the state ed department. Higher ed comes in. Well, what kinds of programs should we have in higher education to bring people through the system so that they can be a good professional? So there's the relationship and the reason why the professions are housed in the higher education committee. And I have a staff that helps me review the many, many bills that we have to prepare for the debate, help me negotiate with the other house and the governor's office as we try to make a law.
How do you, as chair of the Senate Higher Education Committee, how do you interact with your equivalent body in the State Assembly? Ron Canestrari holds your title
Right.
as chair of the Higher Education Committee in the Senate, and the Board of Regents, also a policy-making body for all of education. Do you have joint meetings? I mean, do you work together, crafting approaches to take?
You bring out a good point. It's not only the Board of Regents that I have to deal with, but also with the CUNY board and the SUNY board. And so there are three governance systems that oversee education. Anytime, as you know, you want to make a change in curriculum or you want to add a program, you have to make a master plan amendment change. You've got to go to the Board of Regents. So the Board of Regents certainly impacts what goes on here. What the trustees of the CUNY board do impact what you do here. So we do interact with those bodies to make sure that we as a legislature are doing what is consistent with the local governing bodies, that we don't do crazy or ridiculous things. So we try and be a helper to help them make each of the systems better. I'm very fortunate to have someone like Ron Kenneth as the chair of the Assembly Higher Ed Committee. He's new for many, many years. Ed Sullivan, who was a Manhattan Assembly member, was my counterpart. Ron is newer. I reach out, talk to them to make sure I understand their agenda, to understand their needs, so that I'm not marching in a direction that is different. Now, sometimes that is necessary because of the needs of the individual houses, or if some of the members have different needs. If a senator who represents CUNY has a different need than maybe his assembly counterpart, I'm paying attention to the senator who may be on my committee and what they want. That may not always jive with what the assembly member wants. Most of the time, 95% of the time, they're in sync, they're compatible. But it's really all politics. The legislature is all about communications, and I take that very seriously, and I try and reach out and communicate to people that we're doing the right thing.
Since the early part of 2000, New York State, as just about every other state in the Union, has experienced negative economic growth. Deficits had been ballooning across the United States, and states were having their backs against the wall. And higher education, public higher education, really took it on the chin. We saw tremendous increases in tuition charges across the United States. We didn't see that in New York State. The governor and the legislature did not impose tuition increases for about 7 or 8 years, and then there was a big spike last year. We still see a deficit looming. The governor is going to present his recommendations on, I think, January 7th in Albany. I'm sure you'll be there. I'll be there with you. Any sense of where the challenges are going to be for public higher education through the governor's address, and what you think the legislature is thinking?
In order to comment on that, you have to put it in the context of what are the high-ticket items in the budget. Elementary and secondary education is a real hot-button issue for people, absorbs a lot of the budget dollars. In a $90 billion budget, elementary and secondary education accounts for approximately about $15 billion of that. Higher education, believe it or not, is also there. And just today I was talking with the Secretary of the Senate Finance Committee, Mary Louise Malik, and she indicated that all the numbers, despite sometimes we feel we don't have enough money to do what we need to do in higher education. That has been identified throughout the years as an important priority. Healthcare is very, very important. When we look at the budget, 42% of the budget is being absorbed by Medicaid expenditures. And so our House set up a task force. They're going to make recommendations, I believe, next week on how do we get our arms around that. So one of the things we have to look at the expenditure side, those areas that are sucking out a lot of dollars, we've got to, like the Medicaid, that is not helping our localities, and it's not helping us at a state level because we have to forego funding things like higher education, some health care programs, and other things in the budget. So we have this year a court case that the Court of Appeals ruled, Campaign for Fiscal Equity, prevailed in the Court of Appeals, and that decision said that the legislature must come up and identify what is a sound basic education, those students in elementary and secondary education. People are talking about expenditures in the billions of dollars to achieve that.
Over a period of years.
Over a period of years. Mm-hmm. And it must be over a period of years because
yeah, you just couldn't absorb
you
that.
couldn't absorb that. So this will continue to be a difficult year because the economy is just rebounding. We hope that it will continue to grow, and that will help our deficit. When we talk about the deficit, Chancellor, we talk about programs that are enacted in 1 year, but increase over a 2, 3, or 4 year period. So the legislature, when it enacted programs, let's say 3 years ago, there may be a fourth payment due in the 204-205 fiscal year. Mm-hmm. There's a program that we enacted that had a multi-year impact to allow students and parents who pay the tuition bill to deduct their tuition from their taxes. And we want to make sure that that goes forward in its full intent. So that's why you end up with a deficit, as well as if the revenues don't come in to match what you need to continue some of the programs at their current levels.
You know, we're still facing a deficit of non-inconsequential levels, as you said, and hopefully that'll be moderated by some rebound that we're starting to see, especially in the financial services industry. Some people are saying they're on fire, and in some way profits are way up, they're hiring, and all of that is a very good sign. Campaign for Fiscal Equity is going to have a big impact this year. I don't know what the number is going to be, and the governor has stated no new taxes.
Right. And
I assume he's going to stand tall with no new taxes.
Actually, I think all the leaders have talked about that.
But he just came out a couple of weeks ago, I think. And now those are three difficult barriers to overcome as we see financing for public higher education. Any opportunity that you see, any ideas that you floated yourself about multi-year approaches? I mean, in corporate America, one doesn't have a one-year lens. I mean, you have to have a much broader context. You know, as the chair of the Higher Education Committee, any ideas on that?
Actually, for years, I've been talking about the fact that institutions, meaning CUNY, SUNY, independent, those systems, the public systems, need to have a reliable income flow. They need a dependable and reliable flow. They need predictability in their life.
Right.
students need predictability in their life.
Agreed.
We had, as you had indicated, for a period of 8 years, no tuition increase, and then a big spike. That is not in anyone's interest to ask someone to come up with, $500 additional, $700, $800, $950 additional when you're going along thinking that the world is wonderful, and then all of a sudden someone says to you, you've got to come up with more money for tuition. What I've talked about, and it's done in other places, is to index it, the tuition. To index it so that it goes up each year to the cost of living. Now, there are several indexes, and here you get into a debate about whether the consumer price index is the right index or an index used for higher education. Which one do you use? So that's one of the things that every time we bring up indexing, that is brought up. I also feel that, and I've put this on the table, that a student in a class should be able to have predictability for 4 years. So if we institute a system whereby a freshman class gets an increase, their increase, let's say, is $100 from the previous year's class, then that tuition increase is what that student would calculate for 4 years. That would be the dependability for that student. Now, some people say, well, what about if it takes me 5 years or 6 years? Well, we can't make guarantees beyond 4 years, and in some cases, institutional people say, wow, that's even a tough lift for us to lock in that tuition for that class at that amount.
Let me just take last question, and then we're going to have to end this this segment. Once you decide on some economic index or a basket of economic indicators, suppose you get over that level.
Right.
Shouldn't there be a discussion between the financer, say locality or state government, and the other revenue stream, which should be tuition, some agreement on which party should be, agreeing to what part of whatever that increase is? I mean, that's the way it is done in most places that I'm aware of, rather than just say the student should be the responsible party.
Let me just say this. Our committee and every member on that committee is very, very sensitive about the tuition issue and tuition increases. Every trustee candidate that we have had, whether they be for SUNY or CUNY, that's come before our committee for confirmation, has been very, very sensitive about rush to judgment. Yeah, I would increase tuition. No one wants to increase tuition. On the other hand, we don't want these huge spikes. We do need a dialogue between the institutions on what that level should be. And one of the things that I wanted to make very, very clear is that we cannot substitute state support for increases in tuition. So, in other words, we need to continue tax dollar state support and increase it over this period, that the tuition would go forward in small bites. But in no way, and that has to be part of any legislative resolution, that support cannot diminish, because you can't substitute dollars to say, well, we got $50 more in tuition, so we're going to reduce the state tax dollars $50. That would not happen. No bill, I believe, would pass the legislature unless there was that guarantee in the formula.
I'd love to help you draft that legislation. I think that's great. Thank you very much, Ken LaValle. This has been a wonderful half hour of very engaging conversation. We will be back after hearing from our sponsors with Senator Ken LaValle. Thank you very much.
CUNY offers a range of educational options, whether you're interested in a senior college or a community college, a certificate program, or a graduate degree. You should contact CUNY's Office of Admission Services at 1-800-CUNY-YES or visit our website, cuny.edu.
Even though your cost to attend CUNY is low, the university still offers a full range of financial aid opportunities. Over 70% of CUNY's full-time undergraduate students receive some sort of financial aid. For information on financial aid, call 1-800-CUNY-YES or visit our website at cuny.edu.
Welcome back to CUNY Honors. We're here talking with Senator Kenneth LaValle, Chairman of the State Higher Education Committee in the New York State Senate. Ken, we're in front of a group of students that are representatives of the CUNY Honors College, and we're going to start with this young man who's going to tell us who he is and a question for Ken LaValle.
My name is George Chermak. I'm junior in Borough College, and actually the question is for both of you. I remember some time ago there was an issue of the governor's island being transferred to CUNY, and I would like to ask you about what the plans are. I know that right now the state doesn't have the funds for development of this island, but there are some plans for this?
I think the Chancellor could probably answer in greater detail what's happening with that. But I think that the grounds on the island, Governor's Island, can provide for some very, very exciting kinds of things. And I think there is a commitment to move forward with that, and I think you probably...
There is a corporation that was established called something like the Governor's Island Economic Development and Educational Corporation. And they are in the process of soliciting ideas. And we have given them several ideas of things that we think the university might be able to do on the island. Remember, when the island was transferred to New York State, both the governor and the mayor indicated that CUNY should have a very prominent role on the island and indeed should be an anchor tenant, my term, but that's basically what they were saying. And we expect to have a big presence on the island, and it's moving through its process, and at some point we'll have a better sense of what the thinking is.
Yeah, one of the things that when you have a process in government, you have a committee, there are a lot of disparate views that have to be resolved. Some people come to the table and want to protect open space. Others look at buildings and protect the historic preservation of a particular building. And then people have conflicts as to the mission. You're going to use it for education programs, technology programs. How do you do it with one purpose, or can you have a multi-purposed strategy or mission on the island? So this goes through a lot of debate and discussion, and it's worth the time because it's going to be there for a long time, whatever we do. We're going to invest a lot of money there, and so we want to make sure we get it right. And the great thing about our government system is it's a deliberative process, and debate is good and healthy.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Ye Zhou. I'm from the City College of New York. Because I'm a member of the student government at City College, so I'm always concerned about student representation at different levels, both within City College and within the CUNY system. So I think my question is, will the state legislature considering maybe increase the student seats within the Board of Trustees from 1 to 2, so the student can have more representation and a stronger voice?
You know, that's a good question. I've been involved in the initiatives to put students on our governing boards. As a matter of fact, we just passed, the governor just signed legislation this session to put students on school boards. So that has been, my commitment. I think it's good. This is the first time, I believe, that I've heard increasing that to 2. And I really don't have any position, but it's something that maybe we can explore to see if that is warranted. Now, whenever we do that, we have on the CUNY board, we have 1 faculty member. So the issue then goes, should we have 2 faculty members? So when you have policy, it often includes far more than you could imagine. So I might say to myself, when my staff brings an issue, I think maybe we could put another student on. I'll go, gee, that's a great idea. Then I'm hearing from the faculty people, they want 2. And you say, whoa, wait a minute. So it's something we need to look at, and that's a good thought.
On the CUNY board, there are 2 ex officio members. One is a student rep and one is a faculty rep. The student rep has the vote. The faculty rep doesn't. Does not. Yes.
Hi, my name is Aigul Bogodinova, and I'm from Baruch College, and my question is for the senator. From your biography, we know that you have worked on legislature that deals with disabled and their access to education. I was wondering if you could tell us more about what you did.
That's a great question, and it's something that I'm very, very proud of. And it's something that I actually did, not as a senator, but as the director of the Senate Education Committee. 1975, Governor Carey was the governor at the time. I was director of the committee. I actually drafted legislation that for the first time gave young people in our elementary and secondary schools a free and appropriate education. And prior to that, certain students had to go out and contract for education outside of the public system, and their parents would charge the tuition. And I thought that that was not a very good thing and was inconsistent with the mandate under our Constitution to provide and maintain a system of education for all students. And so I spent literally a year drafting that legislation that allows the establishment of a committee on the handicapped to have a discussion as what is an appropriate education for that student. If the school district does not make an appropriate placement, the parents have an ability to appeal that decision all the way up to the Commissioner of Education and beyond into the courts to ensure that placement for that student is appropriate. And we also ensured that there would be an individualized education plan for each student so that the parent understood what were the goals, what were we trying to achieve, and whether the teachers and the school were achieving those goals in that plan. It's something that I often talk about as being one of my achievements in government, although it was not achieved while I was a member of the New York State Senate. As a senator, I've looked at and made sure that some of our institutions of higher education have programs for the disabled, those who have learning disabilities, so that they can, without a lot of angst, go through a post-secondary program and even professional school program and receive the resources that they need to be all that they can be. So it's something that I'm committed to, and I want to thank you for asking that question.
Great question. Yes.
Hello, Senator. My name is Yosef Ibrahimi, and I'm a junior at Queens College. And my question is, a few weeks ago, I recall reading that several private universities in New York State had approached the state legislature for funding assistance for capital development. And as I read this, I thought of the deteriorating infrastructure of the CUNY system. And I was wondering what considerations go into choosing to fund a private university as opposed to the two public university systems in New York State, and exactly how these funding decisions are broken down.
Well, that's a great question also. That really is. New York State has what we call a pluralistic system of higher education. That means that we value both what goes on and fund what goes on in our public system, CUNY and SUNY, and what goes on in the independent sector colleges, the private colleges. I have been a strong advocate of bond issues for the public systems. We need to continue raising the cap, the bonding cap, to make sure that we are, number one, meeting the state-of-the-art equipment that is needed at our universities, public universities, that the facilities are state-of-the-art, and when we have that, we're able to attract the best and brightest professors and the best and brightest students. So that commitment has never faulted on the part of the legislature. Last year, the Commission of Independent Colleges and Universities came in and said, could we develop a formula like they have in New Jersey, whereby we could get some money. If we raise $3 of money, could we get $1 of public monies? And we looked at that, and the sense is that we need to do that we need to not walk away from the commitment to students in our university system, whether they be in SUNY, CUNY, or the private colleges. The first goal is to meet the needs of the State University of New York, the City University of New York. We believe that we will have the capacity of meeting the needs of the independent sector college. We think we could do the whole thing. But our first commitment certainly is to the public system.
Yes.
Yes, my name is Robert Calaro. I attend College of Staten Island. I would like to know if there was a specific action you did in your life that got you recognized in like political parties, and what kind of opened the doors for you?
Yeah, these are really great questions. I got involved in when I was a teacher. I got involved in being a delegate to the New York State Teacher Association. And I got involved. It was teacher politics. Couple of times a year, we would go to conventions and we would make up resolutions and get them passed, and then we would go to Albany and follow up to see whether the legislature really took action on any of these resolutions, converted the resolutions into a legislative bill, and the legislative bill into a law. And politics, and for those of you who are thinking about a life in politics, it's addictive. It's addictive. And whenever someone tells me and they want to work on my campaign and they go, wow, this was really great, I love this, and I go, be careful, this is an addiction. And so I got involved because the local senator, who was my predecessor in the Senate, asked me, I went to his office and we were chatting, and one night he said to me, listen, I'm going to dinner. You want to escort me to dinner? My wife's down in Florida, whatever, and I'm by myself. I said, sure. So we went to dinner. Then at dinner he said, you know, I've got to go out to this meeting, and do you want to come with me? And I said, sure, I'm not doing anything. I mean, I really was. My wife wasn't happy, but I said, sure, sure. And I went along with him. And we were chatting, and he said, you know, you really have a handle on what goes on in education. And I said, gee, thank you. And he said, I'd like to put you on my staff for $50 a week. I says, wow, that's great. It wasn't the money, it was the experience. And I had an adrenaline rush that I would be on a senator's staff. And, you know, one thing leads to another, and I got involved in local party politics from the ground up. You know, our system starts that in every election district, whether it's you're a Republican or Democrat, or independence party person, or working family party, or conservative party, there are committee people. And below the committee people are assistant committeemen, committee women, block captains. I started as a block captain, going around knocking on doors, getting signatures, you know, loved it. And then became a committee person, and then the party was looking for a moderate. I always think of myself as a moderate. And I wasn't really in that much favor as a moderate in my party, as a Republican Party, but they thought enough of me to think of me to run for an office. I said, nah, I don't want to run for that office. And my first run was for the Senate in 1976. And I ran from the position of Executive Director of the Senate Education Committee, having written, and I talked about the bill on the disabled, Chapter 853, and got into a lot of other things. Went to meetings for my senator and learned how to speak before an audience, and you know, it's addictive. Ran his campaigns. That's a sure lock that you're sucked into the system for life. Run someone's campaign. You're done. You're done. You're then a junkie, a political junkie, and that's how it all happened in short.
Right. Yes.
My name is Roxana Thomas. I'm a political science and history major at York College. You had mentioned before that you wanted to be able to attract the best and the brightest for the CUNY system.
Yep.
I remember reading in the CUNY newsletter that there is still an issue of the tuition remittance for doctoral students that are coming into the CUNY system. The bigger private universities are able to attract them because they're willing to give them waivers for tuition or willing to give them incentives to enroll into the schools. What are the offers that are doing to attract students to stay within the CUNY system?
You know, that's really a great question. You know, one of the things that, and one of the problems, when we have budgetary problems, we're doing all that we can do to maintain our programs at the undergraduate level. And I know that there's always been issues, whether we talk about waivers or whether we talk about tuition assistance or other kinds of financial support for graduate programs. We have, without any doubt, fell short. We fell short. And we need to, in times of plenty, to address those problems for graduates, because we want to make sure that we're getting people to go through, get their PhDs, and become really the kind of leaders that in the academic setting, in teaching, in research, and so forth. So I know we need to do more, and there's no doubt we've fallen short.
You know, Ken, here's a good example of a very glaring disparity between CUNY and SUNY. When SUNY's in SUNY's operating budget, there are dollars provided for tuition remission for doctoral students. CUNY's budget never reflected that, and we have tried legislatively to to get that changed. We have not been successful as yet, but we are now starting to lift this on our own bootstraps and providing opportunities for doctoral students. But if we're really serious in the state about the effect that public higher education can have, not only for the citizens that live in the state, but beyond those borders, the doctoral programs, both in CUNY and SUNY, are some of the finest anywhere.
Yeah.
And we have to invest in these young people and give them the opportunity so they can finish their degrees and not have to work as much as they presently do while studying for their PhD. And we're trying to make progress.
You know, one of the things, just Chancellor, I just want to add to that. The state undertook the funding of the senior colleges, I believe, 1979. In that period, 79,
76, 77,
and so it embarked on a path in which they believed that there would be parity in both systems, and we would move forward very energized. There are periods of time, and I'm aware of the disparity, in the systems, that sometimes there simply is not the kind of cash that we have available to do these things. But the Chancellor has talked about something that is important. Persistence, establishing a goal, keeping your focus on that goal will eventually get you to where you want to go, where you want to get. So I think it will happen, and the question is when. Okay.
Yes.
Hello, good evening. My name is Tama Benjamin. I go to Hunter College, and I'm really interested in juvenile justice and the future of our young people. And what I want to know is, ironically, we have a lot of school violence, particularly in Martin Luther King High School. And I wanted to know how you felt about maybe implementing an anger management course or a conflict resolution course on the primary and secondary levels of education, because I really think that it would help, because that's when their personalities are crystallized. So how do you feel about that?
These questions are so great, and this one is like a question that I set you up to ask me this question. I've been very, very concerned about violence with our young people. The amount of the numbers of suicides that have taken place, violence on students, student upon student, and violence upon students from outside forces. So much so that I have set up a blue ribbon task force in my own Senate district with some very, very high-powered people. Dr. Vincent Fontana, who was health commissioner for several mayors here, and Shirley Strum-Kenny, who's the president of Stony Brook. And we are looking at a number of things, and we found a report, Youth at Risk, of a national commission, and we are trying to build some models for New York State that we believe can be used throughout the state. The second thing that we're trying to do is I will be filing a resolution to create a special month. We believe it's going to be the month of May, which will be Youth Violence Prevention Month. And we want to do the same kinds of things that the breast cancer people have done and the Mothers Against Drunk Driving have done, to build an awareness, to build a force, to engage our community, to engage families and people to attack this problem, because it's destroying our future and we need to address it head on. I believe we're going to come up with some things, and you'll be reading more about this, on what kinds of models we can use. How can we get our community, how can we get society focused? Because we need to build an army to address the problem. And thank you for asking that question.
Ken, when you proceed with that, think of John Jay College of Criminal Justice. We have extraordinary people
thank
there.
you. Yes, I
Extraordinary
sure.
people that can help shape some of this, and we'd really like to help in any way we can. Yes?
Hi, my name is Tomas, and I'm a senior at Hunter College. I guess I have a two-part question. Not long ago, I heard a CUNY president say that we can't even really consider CUNY a public university system any longer, just because of the fact that we rely on tuition as our primary source of income. I was wondering if you could kind of comment on that a little. And the second part, just going back to what your remarks on CFE, I'm trying to understand where you're going with that. If and when the state needs to restructure the funding systems for public schools in New York City and throughout the state, obviously, are you suggesting that we'll have a robbing Peter to pay Paul situation with tuition at the CUNY schools or the university level, or that we will see more cuts at the university level? If you could just elaborate on that a little bit.
The CFE issue is one of money, and when you need to come up with $2 billion to $8 billion over a period of time, that becomes a priority, and you have to address that. It does not mean that any of the other priorities, whether it be higher education or health care issues, falls by the wayside. Not at all. It means that the legislature will use a lot of focus and a lot of energy to address that. The first part of your question is that the issue of free tuition is just not really doable today in the 21st century. It just is not. And what we need to balance is what kind of system. As chairman, I want to make sure that you have all of the courses that you need to graduate in a 4-year period of time, if that is your choice. That you have all the kinds of equipment that you need to be the best professional in your major area. That you are in state-of-the-art facilities. All of that costs money. And so you've got to balance, providing the resources necessary to provide a quality education. And that means sometimes that you have to go to tuition. I said over and over again, legislature is very sensitive about overplaying the tuition issue. We're very sensitive that students and their parents have a limited source of money, but we believe that we have an infrastructure of student financial aid to help the most neediest students get through any increases in tuition. When I poll students, and I've been in high schools, and I say, would you mind paying an extra $100 or $200 in tuition if it meant that you could have the best professors, great classroom facilities, great equipment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Clearly, 80 to 90% say, I don't mind paying that increase. But free tuition is not in the cards.
Senator LaValle, we're going to have to end at this particular point. Thank you very much for your time spent with us today. Thank you, students from our CUNY Honors College. This was a very engaging and informative discussion with you. Thank you for taking time and being with us.
Thanks,
Thank you, audience.
Thank you. Yeah.